Hello. The United States has launched what it's calling defensive strikes in southern Iran. The attacks on missile launch sites and Iranian mine-laying vessels come during a fragile ceasefire between the two nations and attempts to reach a diplomatic solution to end the war. Our North America correspondent David Willis sent this report.
US Central Command makes the point that these were defensive strikes aimed at protecting US forces on the ground. And the targets, they say, included missile launch sites and Iranian boats attempting to place mines, as that statement puts it. But the statement doesn't provide very much more in the way of detail, although there are unofficial reports that there were explosions heard in the port city of Bandar Abbas, which is overlooking the Strait of Hormuz, and also that 2 Iranian vessels were targeted that were thought to be planting mines in the Strait of Hormuz. So this is all part of what CENTCOM is calling here an ongoing attempt to protect US forces in the region there whilst preserving the ceasefire agreement. Now, that ceasefire agreement has been in place for about 6 weeks now. There have been various infractions. Whether this development imperils that ceasefire remains to be seen, of course, at a time when negotiations are underway in the hope of getting a negotiated settlement to this conflict in Qatar.
Well, the US Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, is in India. Our South Asia correspondent, Azadeh Moshiri, is in Delhi, and she told me more about what he's been saying on Iran.
Since he was giving those remarks there on his way, there has been the Quad press statement there where Marco Rubio was joined with his counterparts, foreign ministers of the Quad, to give the press a briefing. But very noticeably, Iran was barely mentioned. The last we've heard from Marco Rubio is that the Strait of Hormuz will be open one way or another. But it's really hard to gauge the state of play when it comes to those negotiations, because what we've been hearing in the last couple of days from White House officials is that progress is going to be made. In fact, the Secretary of State in that same building behind me on Sunday had told us that we could expect good news in a few hours when it comes to opening the Strait of Hormuz. And yet here we are today. That certainly hasn't happened, and there's news of these defensive strikes. Another issue is, of course, the fact that the Iranian officials continue to say there's a lack of trust. And so if they're in Doha participating, trying to further these negotiations with the Qatari Prime Minister, it's hard to see how these strikes will help further those talks, even if the Secretary of State is saying that it's about negotiating some language and that we can expect progress in a few days. Then in parallel, Karen, you've got what's going on in Lebanon with the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu saying that he is going to intensify strikes on Hezbollah. Remember, Iran sees both these conflicts as deeply intertwined. They connect the two, even though the United States doesn't always seem to connect the two in the same way. And so it's still a wait and see as to whether the Strait of Hormuz will be reopened. And in the meantime, you've got this global energy crisis that has been triggered that is hanging in the balance of all of this.
Azadeh Moshiri in Delhi. Residents in Beirut's southern suburbs have been leaving their homes. Israel has been launching airstrikes across Lebanon. Israel's Prime Minister said his country was again at war with Hezbollah. It's continued to target Israeli soldiers who've invaded the south of Lebanon. The strikes come as the Iranian government insists an emerging peace deal with the US should include a complete ceasefire on all fronts in the regional war. Our Middle East correspondent Yolande Nell gave us this update from Jerusalem.
Well, this all comes in the context of mounting public criticism in Israel about the continuing Hezbollah attacks, and as well as the use of explosive drones to deadly effect against those Israeli forces. There are thousands of them currently on the ground occupying part of southern Lebanon. There have also been cross-border strikes as well, and though there weren't any casualties reported yesterday as a result of those, there was a house that was hit in Metula, close to the border. Another one of these explosive drones landed in an open area. And at the moment, there are real restrictions, tight restrictions on people living in the north of the country. Many are saying that they are not sending their children to school for the moment as well. And the Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, he put out a video message last night in which he said that Israel was now going to intensify its strikes against Hezbollah. We heard that there were strikes yesterday in which Israel says that 10 terrorists were killed. The Lebanese media is saying that there were 10 people that were killed as a result of those wide Israeli strikes taking place. But according to Israeli media reports this morning, there are plans that have been drawn up by the Israeli military to expand operations in Lebanon, and they're waiting at the moment for political approval of those.
Yolanda, there had been quite a lot of positive messaging coming from the Trump administration about a peace deal sometime soon, until the events of the last few hours anyway. What's going on in terms of talks? We know that there are gatherings in Qatar.
Yes, so top Iranian officials went over to Qatar. We heard they were there yesterday. Just reports about what is coming out of those meetings. They're said to be concentrating really at the moment on opening the Strait of Hormuz, which would of course really ease the strain on global energy markets, and also talking about unfreezing Iranian assets, some of which are in banks in Qatar. But the idea we're hearing from reports would be that there would then be a memo of understanding that's drawn up that would mean that over 30 to 60 days, a period of time, there would be ongoing discussions with Iran about its nuclear program, what to do in particular about the highly enriched uranium stockpiles that it has, and what to do about its nuclear program. Donald Trump, Israel have made clear that their objective is to make sure that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. And there was some comments from Donald Trump a day ago in which he suggested, perhaps some kind of concession was possible with Iran, saying that those stockpiles of enriched uranium, perhaps they could be diluted inside Iran rather than being taken abroad, and that could involve inspection by the International Atomic Energy Agency.
Yolanda Nell in Jerusalem.